How far would you go when compassion calls? What moves the heart of an ordinary Australian to help someone they've never met? As the war continues in Palestine and Lebanon, Australians from all walks of life are answering this question in different ways. Today, I'm joined by Keagan Bizzle. Keagan is from the Gold Coast in Queensland, and he's here to share his personal story about his travels and his experiences. Keagan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Chay.
Before we get into where you went, can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what's shaped the work that you've done recently?
Yeah, I grew up in Brisbane, and I grew up in acreage. I had a lot of freedom as a kid, very privileged, loving family. I joined the infantry at 17 because I wanted adventure in my life. That was a big, long journey of 7 years. I never went overseas to fulfill that role, but I had an incredible time and a lot of learnings. And after my service in the Defence Force, I just got really passionate about supporting men through mental and physical disabilities, particularly things around PTSD, anxiety, depression. And that led me on a path to start my disability support company, which is now full of men across Southeast Queensland, where we're helping people in the local community. And I'm really fired up about helping communities to foster really healthy environments for their women, the men and the children to grow up in. And, through that journey, I've met a lot of people from different backgrounds and cultures, and just love to get to understand where we come from as a nation and what actually brings us together and builds a healthy, strong nation.
You've got such a strong presence online, so it's very good for you to share a little bit more about how you were growing up and what's shaped you today. What part of your experiences do you think helped shape how you understand and relate to other people?
A lot of pain. Yeah, I've seen a lot of my friends and family go through a lot of painful moments, whether that was from post-traumatic stress disorder or whether that's from, relationship separations or drug addictions. And, I think my mother really instilled in me this really caring nature. And my father was a quite emotionally avoidant, but very hardworking, classic Aussie man. And that beautiful combination of the two of them, I think, created this part of me that wants to be really adventurous, but also wants to care for people and, find out the stories that are behind what's happening in people's lives.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more about yourself and those experiences. What is it about this conflict that motivated your recent travels and gave you that push to act on it and to do something a little more different than what you're doing already?
There was definitely a part of me that really wanted to experience countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, those Middle Eastern countries that I never got to go to as a younger man. But also I had really strong relationships with these beautiful men in Australia that had backgrounds of from Lebanon, or they had Greek backgrounds or Armenian backgrounds. And just the stories that they would say and tell about Lebanon, I was like, I have to go to this country. Like, I don't care what I have to do. I have to go to this country. So at the end of my Europe trip, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to book a ticket. I don't know what I'm going to do there, but I'm just going to go and experience the country, the culture, and the people. And a few weeks before I landed, I started to become a lot more aware of what was actually happening over there and the occupation. And so I started to do a little bit of research and decided, like, I'm just going to go all in on this experience and find out, like, my own answers to the questions that I had around this conflict and this genocide that was happening and all the killing and the bombing. So that was really the motivation for me. And as soon as I landed, I first spent like one day in Jebel Massen up north near Tripoli, which was just
Your
hilarious.
pronunciation is even better than mine.
I've been practicing. I've had a lot of help. And then the second day, I was straight down south, in the thick of it, really getting the stories from the people on the ground. And that was a very emotional roller coaster, to say the least.
You've shared a little bit more on your travels and the desire to go, and explore the different countries. You did land in Jabal Mahsin, but there was that motivation to go further south. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I find it hard to have an opinion on things that I have not seen for myself, and particularly what's happening in Palestine, and also now Lebanon. I just felt this calling. I can't explain it, but it was like telling me, like, you have to go here, and you have to see it for yourself, and you have to talk about it online. And so I did, and that's really as simple in my mind and my body as it was.
So before you arrived in Lebanon, what did you expect to see?
What did I expect to see? I mean, I expected to see some destroyed buildings in the south. I expected to be greeted with a little bit more hostility, I think, I suppose. But it was, it was out of this world. Some of the towns like Nabati were, 90% destroyed, and people were just returning home because Israel had only just moved back to the occupation border maybe 7 days before. And so these families and these young children and the men that were left, which there isn't a lot of them, were coming back to the towns and trying to start their business up again, or rummaging through the destruction to fill a couple bags of clothes of their only belongings that they had. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me. Even getting down there was difficult, through checkpoints and through bridges that had been bombed and roads that had been destroyed, and cars that were flipped upside down on the roads, even to the extent of having Israeli drones flying around 24/7, just making this loud whirring sound, knowing that, they're surveillance drones that are armed with missiles ready to fire at any moment. And it really put in perspective what the people of southern Lebanon are going through. It was really quite surprising to see firsthand. And actually the will of the people was something that really stood out, and still they had a smile on their face, and you could see women driving the cars and picking up rubbish and supporting the family and the community in any way possible, because the men had either been killed or they weren't there to support the family. And everyone was doing their part. It was this polarity of like death and destruction, but also like so much hope and grit and will.
And thank you for sharing that. Was there a particular story that really stood out to you that you'd like to share?
When we got to Nabati, there was this little, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. There was this little coffee hut next to the road, and there was these two young boys. I think one of them maybe was 9 and the other one was maybe 12 or 13. And we were just ordering coffee, and the young kid came out, and I said, "Oh, can I get a photo with you and film your little coffee shack?" And he just had this huge smile on his face. And then he turns to my guide, Ali, and was talking to him. And then he turns back to me and he says, "I hope I will see you again." And I was just like, oh my God, this kid is so grateful that I'm here, like supporting his family to buy some coffee and some drinks. And he's, he had so much life still left in him. And I felt so sorry for him and his family and what he was going through, which he had no reference for. This is his life, and this is what he has to live with and deal with. And he probably doesn't have a school to go back to. And yeah, that was a really emotional moment for me. And I got him flexing by the side of the road. I was like, "You're a strong lad." And he's like, "Yeah." And so it was like this really beautiful, beautiful connected moment. And that's also what I love to do when I go traveling, is I like to inquire about the men in the community. I'm very passionate about men's work and supporting men in my own community. And so when I travel, I really like to find out what men do in the community, how they show up as fathers, how they show up as husbands, what their work is, and how they support the family and their community.
Thank you. And I think I mentioned this before, but you have a very strong presence online, and a lot of that raising awareness on these stories is a very important part of the humanitarian effort, because not everyone has a chance, obviously, to travel abroad and see firsthand what is actually going on there. So thank you, Keagan, for sharing that. If we can now focus on what you're sharing online, it takes a lot of effort to share stories, record events, and connect with others. What's your motivation behind that?
Good question. What's my motivation behind that? I just think it needs to be spoken about. It's just something that Australian media doesn't cover. They talk about maybe the death toll, or they talk about maybe some aid that has been offered to other regions, but they don't specifically show or talk about the damage and destruction and death and what the people on the ground are going through. And when I was there, I was just completely sideswiped. I was like, I have not seen any of this. I've not heard about any of this. Like, why is none of this being brought back to Australia when Australia has a huge Lebanese community, let alone other communities from other parts of the world? I think it's like 20% of Australians speak another language other than English at home. And so, our country is, it's been colonized by immigrants, and it has been built on a lot of immigration and immigrants coming here and starting jobs and starting families. And so I just think, the world or Australia needed to know the stories about what's happening. And in the Australian Defence Force, Australia has had one of the largest peacekeeping histories within the world. We've been to a lot of different places, supporting a lot of different communities. And I think that should be something that is maintained. And Lebanon feels like it's been left out.
Thank you for sharing that. And obviously, through your lived experience and your recent travels, a lot more people know about what is going on from your perspective and what you've seen. What's one message you would share with Australians, especially those that aren't engaged with the conflict or maybe don't want to know about the conflict?
Yeah, it would be that there is a genocide happening right now in Lebanon, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Men, women, innocent men, women, and children are being killed. Land is being seized. Glyphosate is being sprayed over the ground so that no one can ever return and plant crops again. 100-year-old olive groves are being burnt so that you can no longer ever harvest anything from there. And yeah, even if it's just sharing a message or talking about it in conversation, like anything that we can do to broaden our awareness outside of ourselves, I think is a duty that we hold as human beings, and especially as a nation.
Thank you, Keagan. I'm sure many people in the Lebanese Australian community, as well as those abroad, would be very grateful to hear that message and your support for Lebanon and, of course, Palestine. If those watching want to stay connected with you and support your humanitarian efforts, what would you suggest they do?
Instagram is the best platform. So if you just search Keagan, Keagan, full stop Bizzle, Bizzell, jump on there, send me a message. I try to reply to every single one, although it's getting a little bit overwhelming right now. But I'd love to have you along for the journey.
Thank you very much, Keagan. And for those watching, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Oz Arab Media team to share any more of your personal stories or questions for me or Keagan,